मुझे नहीं दिख पाएगा कि मेरी क्लास में कौन अवेलेबल है कौन नहीं अवेलेबल। Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, students. Welcome you all on this online session of Political Science and International Relations batch. We have completed part A of our course. Part A of our course, we talked about Western political thoughts, in which we saw thinking of Western thinkers. We divided our syllabus in chronologically. First, in Western political thought, we saw ancient Greek thought. In ancient Greek, we saw ideas of Plato and ideas of Aristotle. Modernity began when people started to question religion, people started to question the church. Machiavelli acts as a thinker in transition. So, with Machiavelli, we see an advent of or rise of modernity in the way people are thinking. Why Machiavelli is considered as first modern political thinker is because he suggested to separate religion from politics. Okay, what do we mean by thought here? Thought represents thinking of an age. It was the idea of secularism that Machiavelli talked about that became the foundation stone of rise of modernity in Indian political thought. In last year 2020 UPSC, you get one question, discuss Machiavelli's idea on secularism, in which we have to highlight about his thinking in The Prince, how he was the first modern thinker to suggest and bring out our syllabus from dark ages of medieval times and into an advent of modernity. So in our modern thought, first thinker will be Machiavelli. Then after, especially the age of enlightenment and Renaissance, we see rise of social contract tradition. Three main thinkers we have discussed in social contract tradition. In social contract, the first one being Hobbes, then Locke, and then French thinker Rousseau. Yes, so the thinking of all the three are in one structure. They talk about state of nature. Okay, state of nature is a hypothetical situation in which there is no state, there are no laws formed, and that is governed by basic human nature. So any social contract theory will first begin with thinkers' perception about human nature. Hobbes has described humans to be very selfish, very driven by their passions and away from reason, in which in Hobbes' state of nature we see a situation of might is right. Okay, since his human nature was such, we see the state of nature is a place where life is insecure, life of man is solitary, brutish, short. Okay, and a man is always in a situation of insecurity. To get out of this situation, all the people decide to form a state. So here state comes out as a contract. Theory of Hobbes is different from Locke, where Locke said that man is yes driven by passion, but man is reasonable as well, and man is reasonable in most times, because man knows that if I do not take into account interest of other people as well, I might be mighty, I might be powerful, but 10 people can gang upon me and can attack me in my sleep. So man is trying to create a situation of goodwill, situation of cooperation. So his state of nature, governed by his perception of human nature, is a state of peace, goodwill and tranquility. His government, his state is, his society is prior to state, in a sense that society was already existing. In Locke, we see two contracts. In first contract, the existing society got formalized in terms of a civil society. First contract led to creation of a civil society. And in second contract, we see a fiduciary institution, a fiduciary body, which is a trust institution of the state, in which people transferred their rights to a trust body, a state to safeguard them. And that is why in our Indian Constitution, especially motivated by the US Constitution, we see an elaborate scheme of rights which are protected by the state, because state acts as a trust body of the people. People have the right to revolt and take back their consent from the state if the state is seen to be breaching of their fundamental rights. Okay, Locke is a very important thinker, because in Locke we see foundation of liberalism. Okay, Rousseau is a controversial thinker of social contract theory, because he one of his most important statement is, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. He tried to create the state to free man, to provide a state of freedom to man. But in doing so, he gave the concept of general will, which became the inspiration of many totalitarian leaders like Mussolini. So after the social contract theory, we see one of the most important thinker, Marx. Very few thinkers have changed the course of history itself, and Marx is one such thinker, because he showed people a new way of life. He described that the first historical act of man is production, okay, not thought. So in Marxism, we see communism, socialism, historic materialism, and a very important theory in which he has described how our society is exactly. So, which is the base and superstructure theory. Base and superstructure theory. Okay, in which he has said that the foundation of a society is economic, and all other institutions are but reflection of this society. In Marxism, we see many different schools of thought. We see traditional Marxist, orthodox Marxism, and then we see critical school of Marxists represented by Herbert Marcuse. Okay, one important topic that I want to discuss and take up today, since we are beginning this new form of transfer of knowledge, continuing our political science, I want to discuss with you today the concept of justice and how the concept of justice has seen an evolution from ancient Greece to Rhodes. Before doing so, those of you have done part A with B, which is Western political thought. I want to check your knowledge before we fully break into Indian section. So I have a few questions with me, and we will try today to handle those questions. These are past year questions, and we will try to check our knowledge today. So, first question that was asked was Machiavelli's secularism. As we have discussed, Machiavelli was the first modern thinker. His book was The Prince, in which he had given the foundational idea of secularism, how the prince should use religion as an instrument of controlling the mass ideology. Religion is the opium of the masses, was said by Marx, but it was Machiavelli who realized the utilitarian aspect of religion in controlling the masses. So, this particular question you will be able to handle with the help of your notes. One analytical question that was asked was, make a comparative assessment. Comparative assessment on Greek perception of justice with Rawls' idea of justice. So this was little analytical, in which you would have to require little bit of thought and little in-depth understanding. So firstly, as we have discussed many times, that justice forms one of the core concepts of political science, political thought. because justice is one of the foundational values of human society. Like truth is the value, one of the foundational value of morality. Similarly, justice is a foundational value of society. What do I mean when I say it is a foundational value? It means that automatically everyone agrees that once people see that justice is being done in any political system, they will not revolt. So now the question is trying to ask us, how do you compare the perception, the understanding of justice as you see in ancient thought as compared to Rawls? Rawls, as we have discussed, he is one of the prominent thinker of 20th century. So you are supposed to juxtapose or see side by side a thinking which belonged to ancient times with modern times. In ancient Greece especially, you see two different stream of thoughts and two different perception of justice. While Plato went for a radical idea of justice given by his two main planks of justice, which is proper positioning and non-interference. So firstly, while handling this question, you are supposed to give an overview of ideas of justice, why is it foundational, and how the perception of justice has gone an evolution from ancient Greece till 20th century, and how where there have been radical thoughts being countered by Marx. It was Rawls' perception of justice of 20th century which became the foundational stone of doing justice in modern societies. Firstly, you will talk about Plato, saying that Plato was concerned with the idea of making Athens the greatest state, the ideal state. In doing so, he wanted to make Athens as a state, as a nation state, be based on foundation and higher ideals of justice. Plato belongs to idealist school of thought. Okay, so this is something you have to highlight, that idealists are the thinkers who think about society as how it ought to be rather than how it is. So Plato was an idealist in which he had given a new form of society which is based on principles of justice. What are the principles of justice according to Plato? Proper positioning and non-interference. How he would ensure that? He has given an elaborate system of education and has suggested a mechanism of communism. Okay, so you will give a brief of that how he has highlighted in his work the elaborate theory of education. Okay, we have discussed this, and in communism you will say that he was little ahead of his time, that he, in order to make sure that people are free of corruption and free from any element of passion and vices, he has suggested a theory of communism. By these two mechanisms, a philosopher king will emerge. A philosopher king will be unimpeachable. That means he is a foundation or reflection of the highest ideals, highest morality of our society. Okay, and the only restriction on philosopher king is that he cannot change the system. Apart from that, philosopher king is the supreme. Plato goes on to say that it would be unwise to have an expert medical practitioner and limit him with book of medicine. Similarly, he has not placed any limitations on the philosopher king. So in this way, you will discuss Plato's ideas of justice. Then in ancient Greece, we also see Aristotle's idea of justice. Aristotle is a constitutionalist through and through. He believes that golden mean is the golden ratio. Golden mean is the golden ratio, meaning that we should have justice is in maintaining balance in the society. That means he is vouching for constitutionalism and parliamentarism road to do justice. While we see a stark contradiction between ancient Greek and Rawls. What was Rawls' motivation? Rawls' motivation was rising protests in modern state, especially USA. There were many feminist movements, black movements. All of them were driven because they felt that the state is unjust. State is only working for the property class, for the privileged class. And he suggested that justice is in making sure that everyone sees that justice is being done. Okay? Justice is a perception. That means even the least advantaged section should feel that institutions of the state are working in their interest. So he gave 3 principles of justice. First being liberty, then equality, and third, difference principle. So since it's comparative, with every step you have to keep on giving contradiction. While Plato was an idealist, he wanted to make an ideal state. Rawls is a realist. He is seeing the problems, the protests happening in modern nation state and trying to come to foundations of justice that are acceptable to all. Okay, his book is A Theory of Justice, published in 1971, in which he has given these 3 principles. I had tried to explain to you theory of Rawls in terms of justice by an example. Like, suppose you have a society in which there are 2 people, right? One is Wahid and other is Seema. So both of them are situated in modern USA. Wahid is making 80,000 annual. In the whole year, he's making 80,000. He is an auto driver or a taxi cab driver. So his income is such. While Seema is a neurologist. That means she is an expert doctor. Okay. So she is able to make, let's say, 20 lakhs per annum. We are doing it in Indian currency for the ease of our understanding. You have to understand why is this unjust and why people like Wahid were protesting in the society. So protests lead. There are protests in the society when people like Wahid, who are part of disadvantaged community, feel that they do not have any way to ever become advantaged elements of the society. They feel that the structure of the society is such that they will never be able to break the chain of oppression, the chain of misery, suffering, poverty in their lifetime. Hence, all of them join hands and lead a lot of protests. Especially, I would remind you, in 2001, there was an Occupy Wall Street movement in USA, in which a lot of, you can say, workers, they occupied the building of Wall Street, which represents capitalism in US, and they went against the rising inequality, income inequality that were happening in US. So Rawls was seeing, he was wary of all this. It had been a long brewing phenomena. So he said that he was trying to justify inequalities. Major concern in modern times have become now inequality. Like justice would be, according to Rawls, Inequalities can be justified, okay, if inequalities are created by fair means. Okay, so he's saying that if Wahid is not having any legal restriction to come out of his condition of being an auto driver and become a neurologist, then you can justify. If there is no law in the country saying that people of certain community, people who are blacks, people who are of particular religion cannot become expert doctors, if there is no such oppressive, restrictive law, then you can justify it. Fine, there are no legal restriction. That means there has to be a rule of law and equality of opportunity. Second, birth factor, which we call brute luck. Brute luck means pure luck. So now, since Plato had a different mechanism at arriving his ideal state, Rawls also had a different mechanism of arriving at these three principles of justice. He had talked about original position and veil of ignorance. Original position is when you take a person out of all the ties of the society. You remove a person from his social, civil, political, economic ties and take him at his original position. At his original position, the person will not be biased. The person will not try to make decision that will benefit or advantage any of his ties. So he will be rational at his original position. And at his original position, Rawls has placed this rational man behind a wheel of ignorance. Behind the wheel of ignorance, the person becomes ignorant of his natural facts. That means what are his qualities, what he has, is he belonging to a advantage section, is he belonging to disadvantage section. So behind that, he will try to make such laws that are balanced. That means if he is advantaged, the society should not be such that my advantages are taxed too much. If I am born disadvantaged, like suppose if I am born in Wahid's family, I should get opportunities to become a neurologist. I should get opportunities to rise in the society. So, birth factor. That means if the society, institutions of the society are designed in a way that compensates people who are just out of pure, sure, brute luck, born in such poor families, and they are supported by the society, supported by the institutions to rise in the society, then you can justify the inequality. So first, to remove legal restriction, he has suggested rule of law or liberty. Okay, liberty and equality, both acting will ensure that there are no legal restriction placed on Wahid. That means Wahid is not stopped by the state or institution to become a neurologist. And birth factor, suppose Wahid, he is born in a poor family, he has to supplement his family income, he has to study and work also. So he is given a disproportionate burden, while Seema, born in a family of educated people, she does not have that burden to supplement to the family income or work. So she has all the free time to study and improve. So if the society is compensating Wahid in certain manners by difference principle, now many different societies can try to do so in a different manner. In India, suppose, we are more familiar with that example, like SC, STs, OBCs, they are given lesser cutoff. Like people like Wahid, if they are not able to score, let's say 100, even if they score, let's say 77 or 78, below a lower cutoff, still they are admitted. That means the state institution recognize their brute factor and they are trying to compensate by creating a difference principle. So Now you will be able to handle this question of comparative assessment of principle of justice between Plato and Rawls. Okay, and you have to categorize and contrast them in firstly their thinking, Plato being an idealist and Rawls being a realist thinker. Second, in their approach, okay, while Plato went for a radical approach, wanted to restructure the society entirely, uprooted, okay, suggested a theory of education to find the philosopher king, to find the qualities of a person, and theory of communism, in which they try to stop corruption and stop the element of appetite. While Rawls wanted to go for a piecemeal or like a not so radical, realist, balanced approach, in which Rawls comes out as an institutionalist. That means Rawls wanted to make institutions of the state appear fair and be based on his principles of justice. So by contrasting their thinking and their methodology as well as their outcomes, what is the outcome in Plato? Outcome of Plato is a ideal state led by philosopher king, while outcome of Rawls is a lesser protest, removal of protest in the society and relative situation of peace in the society. So in this manner, we can go for a comparative study once we understand the topic in depth, in detail. Since this is our first online session, we did a little recap, a little review. Before we go on to our next session, that is going to be tomorrow, I would request you all, we will supply you with some PDFs of the class. So I will request you to read it first and then come to the class so that we are able to have a discussion on the topic. We will be discussing first modern Indian thinker, which is Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and we will be trying to understand his thinking, his thought. In Indian section, we had already discussed ancient thought, which is thinking of Manu and Kautilya. We will begin with modern Indian thinkers, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. So just read the PDF and then we will meet again tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much.